Good afternoon. This is the JP Dinnell podcast Q&A session with my boy Lucas. What's up, Lucas?
What's up, dude?
How are you doing, my man?
I'm freaking fantastic.
Let's go.
Ready to roll, dude.
I like it.
Because I've got a question for you about one of the hot topics in the NCC world.
Oh my gosh.
For the civilian. So this is actually like a legitimate thing that I've heard a lot of civilians talk about. It became a little bit of a joke a few years ago on and this is how I know about it. I don't endorse this podcast at all, and I don't listen to it. But the Two Bears, One Cave podcast with Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer, two comedians that have a podcast together. And they brought up on their podcast, and this is how it kind of came to my attention, right? That this little thing called Stolen Valor is being used as kind of a joke in some realms that, like, all right, if you say that we ran together for 5 miles, and I really know that, like, I ran 5 miles and you, like, we did a 5K together. Let's do that. Yeah, we both did a 5K together. And then I ran the 5K and you, like, ran 3K and walked 2K, and then I'd be like, bro, that's Stolen Valor. You didn't blah, blah, blah. So there's like this joke that's going on between them about this. And this gets brought to my attention by some of my other friends who listen to that podcast and some others. And they were like, yeah, so there's this Stolen Valor thing. Like, I wonder what the guys think about it. So my first question then is how do you deal with Stolen Valor? And then I have a second to that comes straight from a youth camp that I just worked, that I've got a legitimate question about how I handle the situation and need some guidance on.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how I deal with Stolen Valor now versus how I used to are two different scenarios.
Okay, cool. First off, how do you recognize it, right? Because as a civilian, I didn't know what to look for until...
Well, that's why people do it.
Right.
Because they know most civilians and even most military aren't going to be aware enough to call somebody out or know that they're lying.
So I didn't know much about it until, I don't know, probably until we started doing the Q&As, when we brought up some stuff about, no, it wasn't the Q&As. It was with Mike Mitchell. So so with Mike Mitchell, I looked up what the patch was for the first LAR, the group that he worked with.
Okay.
And he was talking about those guys didn't get any commendation at all for anything, and he talked about the medals that the other people got. And I started looking them up, and it was like then, because I kind of knew that there was like a specific way that everything in the board was kind of supposed to go together and all that. Is that what you call, like, what are you supposed to call that? The thing.
Oh, your ribbons?
Your ribbons. I want to use proper terminology.
They're like your rack of ribbons, because it's like a rack. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've always just called
there's a certain order where things are supposed to go.
Board, ribbon rack. I don't know. Ribbon rack, ribbon board, whatever.
Yeah. So there's a certain order where things are supposed to go. The certain ribbons mean that you served in certain areas, like all of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
That's when I first started doing a little bit of research into it, and I was like, holy smokes! Like, if I knew this, it would be really easy to spot if somebody didn't have it. So is that like the first place that you go, or are there other things?
Well, I mean, yeah, because you're doing research, and I've been called out for Stolen Valor before. I was at my buddy's airborne Army graduation, and some Army guys came up to me because I have an Army Commendation Medal with Valor, and they know what that is. That's a rare thing for Army guys to get.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden they see it on some dude in his Navy dress blue uniform.
Right.
And, I have a Trident on there, and so they thought I was just faking everything.
Yeah, like some guy that picked up a bunch of trinkets from an Army Navy shop.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I also understood, because here's the deal. I was working at Echelon Front at this point. I was still within the window where I could wear my uniform afterwards, because I was still in the inactive reserve. And
which that's a totally other mind-blowing thing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was authorized to be able to wear my uniform still. So I was wearing my dress blue uniform at a military ceremony. So all right, so I'm in my dress blue uniform. And, these guys come up, I have a Silver Star, Bronze Stars with Valor, an Army Commendation with Valor, a Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Valor.
You have an impressive ribbon board.
It's okay.
Yeah,
but it's noticeable.
Do. Yeah, for sure.
And then you got the Trident on top of it.
Yep.
You got the jump wings underneath.
A lot of shiny stuff.
And these guys come up and they're like, hey, that's, what's this for? I already know the game. Like, right. I know what they're doing because I've done it to other people.
Right.
And I wasn't offended because what they were doing is valid.
Yeah.
And guess what?
It is kind of the right thing to do in that situation.
And you know also why I wasn't being offended or acting guilty? Because I wasn't guilty of anything.
Yeah.
Guilty people get offended and they get aggressive and push back. And I was like, okay, boom. And they're like, what's this for? I'm like, it's funny. And I loved it. I loved what these soldiers were doing. The first one, they're like, hey, what's that? I'm like, expert pistol. You know exactly what that is. And it's like, what's that one? And we're going through like, what's that one? I'm like, Presidential Unit Citation. What'd you get that for? Boom. Hey, what's this one? I was like, you know what that is. It's an Army Commendation with Valor. How do you have that as a set? Well, got it from Ramadi, Colonel Clark. And they're like, wait, you work? And I'm like, yeah. And then also one of the guys was like, I was in Ramadi at this time. I'm like, who'd you work with? And he said, I'm like, yeah, I was with you guys out at Camp Corregidor. And he's like, what? And all of a sudden, like now it's like, we were legitimately.
Now you're bros.
We were deployed together at the same time. We were in the same battle.
Right.
Multiple times deployed together. We fought, like our units literally fought with each other. Not with
probably
each other,
saw each other, but didn't recognize one another.
Dude, we were at Camp Corregidor was not a big place.
Right.
It was, and so we started talking, and all of a sudden the guys was like, what are you doing after the graduation? I'm like, hanging out with my best friend. Like, bro, let's go grab some drinks. I'm like, I'm going to hang out with my bro, but I appreciate it. I got actually one of the guys' number and we stayed in contact. And, so what these guys were doing was, I was like, cool, I know.
Yeah.
I knew what they were doing and they did it very professional. And so one, you're going to have to know what you're looking for.
Sure.
And I mean, there's some guys that are just so ridiculous and they go, they'll put like, the Trident on an Army uniform or Army medals and accommodations on an Air Force, right? Or they're wearing a Marine Corps uniform with, a Ranger tab. And it's like, at least do a little research. And these guys don't because they're morons.
Go to Wikipedia.
But here's the thing. People that are going to play the Stolen Valor game are absolute morons. Here's the problem I have. It's when veterans allude to doing more than they actually did and or lie about being a part of units. It's like, dude, and this is super uncomfortable. I have had people go, oh, my son was in the SEAL or my uncle was a SEAL or my dad was a SEAL. I'm like, cool. And then we start talking like, oh yeah, he was stationed here. And I'm like, for how long? Now, I always say for how long because I also know that if they say somewhere outside of where the SEAL teams are normally stationed, it could be a one-off thing. Like maybe
they got sent for support or something like that.
Or maybe they were, to support the family. Meaning, like let's say my wife was sick, and the SEAL teams are going to be like, all right, you guys need to be back in Mississippi. That's where she's from. She has a support system. She's going through cancer treatment. Your in-laws are going to be able to help take care of the kids. Hey, we're going to send you to this duty station and you're going to be a recruiter.
Yeah.
And so it's in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi. Mississippi's a bad example because there's a lot of naval things, but let's just say it's like Indiana, right?
Or Fort Benning.
Yeah, Fort Benning, like where it's not even close to like it's an Army thing, but they're gonna, hey, we're gonna have you as an Army Navy liaison for like the military can get creative. If you have good leaders, they're gonna get creative and they're gonna take care of you. Like mine did. When I was getting out, they were like, hey, are you for sure getting out? I was like, yeah, I have to get out. I need to get out. This is why I'm getting out. And my leadership was like, okay, cool. And they're like, hey, we need a liaison out in North Mississippi at the shooting school that we go to. And so my leadership allowed me to live in North Mississippi while I was still technically stationed in San Diego. So they put me on temporary no-cost orders, meaning it didn't cost the command or the Navy anything. They weren't paying me per diem.
Right.
They weren't doing it. It literally was at zero cost because they knew I was getting out. I needed that time to help Amanda with the kids, the transition and everything else. And I had good leadership. And so, but the stipulation was, hey, when we show up for a shooting school everything needs to be taken care of.
Right.
When we come out here for training, everything needs to be taken care of. So in actuality, I was saving them money, because when they would go out there on a training trip, I didn't collect per diem. Wasn't in a hotel. I didn't collect per diem, and I didn't have a rental car anymore.
Yeah.
So every trip that I was going to be out there, they weren't paying for airfare. They weren't paying for a hotel. They weren't paying for per diem. They weren't paying for a rental car.
Right.
So now, like, the command is like, oh, like, and I had helped present that case. I'm
Sure.
like, oh, you know, this is this. And my master chief was like, dude, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I said, and all these things will be taken care of. He goes, oh, so I don't have to send people out ahead of time.
Yeah.
Which saves him
More money,
hotel,
more
per
time.
diem. Yeah.
Yep.
So extra, you know, boom.
Man hours,
And then
all
on
of
the
it.
back end of that trip, guess what guys want to do? They want to go home.
Yeah.
They've been on the road for however long. It's at the end of a 2-week trip. The last thing guys want to do is stay for an extra day or two to clean up the range and do all these things. Guys are, bro, they're trying to turn and burn. They're trying to get back home.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Part of my responsibility was doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
So on the back end, boom. And then also helping, going out to the shooting school and working with the instructors to create curriculum and improve the training. And so, you know, I had that ability to do that. And so if you were to be like, if someone was like, hey, where you stay, or like, you know, where you stationed at? And I'm like, boom. They're like, well, where do you live? And I told them, they're like, that's a lie. Well, no, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And so you have to have a basic understanding of the military, of the branches, of the different bases, and
How those
also
things
like,
operate.
and just asking
Yeah.
questions. And here's the thing, the people that lie about this stuff, it's pretty easy to figure out. Like, I have had people reach out to me like, hey man, I got some guy who said he was a SEAL. It's not adding up. I'm like, okay, well, what's not adding up? They're like, he's saying that he can't talk about his buds class. Okay. Major red flag. Cause guess
Yeah.
what? You can. When people are like, oh, that's classified. Well, then why are you talking about it in the first place?
Yeah.
The questions that most people are going to ask, 99% of the time, you're not asking a classified question.
Right.
Where you were stationed, none of that is classified. Unless you're talking to other people. But guess what? They're not going to say that's classified. They're going to say, oh, this is where I was stationed at. And where they were stationed at is factual. Now, where they did other stuff, like, cool, they're just not going to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Anybody that has classified information has a cover story that they can tell with an incredible amount of believability.
Because most of it is actually true. That's
Yeah.
what makes it a believable thing.
Right.
You know, there's just little things. And
Unless you're Tony Cowden, which apparently, like, you're just not believable.
Yeah.
This is my favorite quote from that.
that was
from that
amazing.
thing.
Cool. Thanks for your opinion. And so with the Stolen Valor thing, it's just idiots, you
Yeah.
know, and it's unfortunate. So going back to what I said, like, people are like, oh, so-and-so. And I'm like, that's just, I'll start asking questions. And then you find out that somebody literally has just lied to their family the whole time.
Oh man, that's brutal.
And it's just, and you know, and so here's the thing, it's, you have to decide, what do you do with that info? Do you share it, or do you just let them, you know? Now, if I ever talk to the individual, I'll straight up tell them, like, hey, you've been lying to your family, and I know.
Yeah.
So you need to come clean, or it will be exposed. If they're using that for gain.
Right.
If they're not using it for any like current gain or whatever, and they're just living a lie, I'll tell them like, hey, your service was admirable. You didn't need to lie and make it more than it was. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that. Now, there was an older guy in North Mississippi that was in the Navy, Vietnam time frame, who used to wear a trident. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's an old school SEAL. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I see him one time at an event, and he's wearing his uniform and trident. And I'm like, these things don't make sense. And so I start asking him, and quickly I realized that he was lying. And I said, hey, man, I'm a SEAL. You're not. If I ever see you wearing that on your uniform again, I'm going to rip it off. And everyone's like, oh, he's a nice old guy. And I'm like, I don't care. He's also full of it, and he's lying. Like, his service.
Nice old guys don't lie like this.
Yeah, and I don't care if he is a nice old guy. I don't care if he's a grandfather. He's lying. And people are like, oh, but he's a grandfather. I'm like, he's still lying.
Yeah.
He's still a POS. He's still literally lying for his gain, because people thought he was a SEAL, and he would use that to his advantage to get free things. And
jacked up,
you
man.
know, and I was like in like nose to nose, because he was trying to come to some veteran event wearing his uniform, and I told him to go take off his uniform, and I'm like, go take off your uniform, or I will rip it off of you.
Yep.
Now, this was pre-Echelon Front time
Sure.
frame. I had just transitioned out. Would I do that currently? No. but I would make it to where
You would still handle the situation.
I would address it and handle it. I wouldn't threaten to rip his uniform off. But
makes a little more sense.
My friends joke. They're like, the pre-Echelon Front JP versus Echelon Front JP can be two different people. I'm like, well, yeah, that should be for most of us in our lives. Like,
as we get older and mature.
Yeah, that should be a thing.
There's another primary difference there of a decade that, like, the pre and post Echelon Front is one thing, but also you've had a whole decade of time to grow and raise kids and all of that stuff.
Everything changes, Yep. But I, at the time, like, I felt like that was also a good version of what I could have done.
For sure.
Which
right?
it is.
Yeah.
And I've had those situations where I've exposed guys that were lying, and I'm like, hey, you're going to come clean. Well, I'm like, cool. Well, either you come clean or I expose you. Which do you want?
Oof.
And I was giving people the opportunity to, because here's the deal. If I expose them, that ruins everything.
Oh yeah.
If they come clean, they have the ability to redeem themselves.
Yeah.
And, Don Shipley has an incredible YouTube channel that he's had forever where he just exposes.
I really want to talk to you about this guy at some point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can have him on the podcast one time.
He fascinates me because of the Navy SEALs that are kind of out there. He's been the one that's been out the longest.
Yeah, well,
he's been public
to protect
the longest.
The community.
Yeah.
It's funny. Guys called him one time, and we're like, "Oh, there's this guy." Blah blah blah. It's back in North Mississippi. There was like this stupid little thing going on in the MMA community, and these guys thought I was a fake SEAL.
Oh, gosh.
These guys somebody was like trolling them, and somebody had created this fake account that for whatever reason they thought it was me, and they were trolling these guys, and they thought it was me, and I was like, I don't need to use a fake account. Like, I'll tell you exactly how I feel. Like, and I wasn't involved in this at all. Well, and I honestly, I was like, I don't have any drama with you guys. Like, I don't care. Like, this is stupid.
Right.
And they, like, I guess they called Shipley and they're like, hey, blah, blah, blah. We're headed over to his house to go expose him. And he goes, yeah, I would recommend not doing that. And he told him that I was a SEAL. And then he got a hold of me. He was like, hey, bro, I'm just going to give you a heads up. These guys said they're coming over to your house to expose you. And I was like, cool, I'll be waiting. Like,
great.
So what are you gonna do? You're gonna come over to my house, and I text a couple of buddies that were police officers and SWAT guys in that town that I literally have worked with and had friendships with and had trained, and they're like, it's funny, they're like standing by.
Yeah,
it was kind of like, it was just so stupid and childish. Like, that's what it is childish. And people that lie about their service and lie to say that they were in the military when they weren't. They're childish, immature people. It's very unfortunate. They're living this lie that I don't understand why they do it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, so I don't really get it, and
a lot of people don't.
Here's the situation, like, as it came down, because we've had some encounters with some people who have had Stolen Valor over the years. Typically, when I'm with a friend of mine who's served, right, that they'll notice something is not right, like mismatched camo or something like that, where they're like, those don't go together, and it'll take me a second, and I'm like, oh, you're right, no, they don't. And I'll also confess that, like, I've done my fair share of shopping at the Army Navy stores, right, for like the 50 cal ammo cans. Are great when you can find them there. I've got an LBE pack that I really dig, that I use whenever I go on, like, long motorcycle trips and stuff like that. And I have had more than a few pair of Navy dress blue and dress white bell bottoms. Right?
Being in a band, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Like, when we were having to do stuff that were like 70s nights or something like that, I was like, where can I find bell bottoms? And the guys were like, go check the Army Navy store. That's just about the only place where you're going to be able to find bell bottoms now, like, if you can't get them at a thrift store. And sure enough, right? Yeah. Like, they weren't crazy, but they were awesome.
Yeah. And super comfortable.
I was going to say, really, like, comfy. Really comfy. Right?
It reminds me of them. the Versa pants.
Okay,
from
I was going
Origin.
to say, yeah.
And the Versa lights that I brought you to check out.
Yeah, they
just
seem like
feeling
the
those,
same material.
How comfortable do those
Yep.
are those pants?
So, like, that's it.
By Origin, by the way.
Yeah.
Origin Versa lights.
There you go.
And the Origin.
So we went shopping at those places, but I was never like looking for the whole thing.
Yeah.
In those places, though, there were definitely guys that were.
Oh, for sure.
So let's fast forward to.
Well, LARPing is a real thing. The live action role play on at Airsoft places, like it's crazy. The amount of gear, dude. The offers I've had from people that have said, "Hey, do you have any of your gear? I will buy your gear." Like the amount of money, and I'm like, no. Like, and this was when I was in the military. And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's my issued gear. I'll go to jail. I'll literally go to jail for that. And then when you get out, like there's some gear that you can keep. They're like, hey, you can keep it or throw it away. Like the Dermoband, I don't know what that, I can't remember what that stands for, but it's literally old gear that guys would like throw in the Dermoband, and then the military recycles them, reuses them, or does whatever. And so there is gear that guys do have when they, get out that they were able to keep.
Sure.
And it's crazy. Crazy the people that want that for Airsoft.
Oh, bro. Yeah, the Airsoft stuff is wild.
I mean, those guys are in the game. Like, it's their game. I don't do it.
Yeah.
Not talking anything bad about it because, hey, if that's something that somebody's into and it's their, like, it's
you want to talk about like
their thing.
A team building and community building exercise, though.
It can be for sure, but
if used properly.
Yeah, if used properly. But here's my thing: guys will like talk crap about the Airsoft paintball facilities and like call them like tactical nerds and all this other stuff. I'm like, well, guess what? They're spending their Saturday and Sunday doing something constructive, active. They're moving around, and they're not sitting at a bar like you are all day long.
Yeah.
So it's like,
don't be a bum.
It's funny. Right. Like, I think the people that talk bad about the Airsoft community are usually the people that are getting hammered on the weekends in a sports bar, cheating on their wife, flirting with some waitress. So cool. Just throwing that out there.
That out there. Throwing that into the ether. Yeah.
I find that comical. It's like
really is.
You're literally going to talk bad about somebody and their life choices, yet you're over here, not doing anything to better your life. Now, I'm not saying people that are playing Airsoft are bettering their lives, but I don't see it as a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not.
It can be productive.
Anything that becomes obsessive can be bad, right? So there's always that caveat to all of it. But like a lot of our students do it. Our youth director was like way into Airsoft, and so he takes the kids out.
It's cool.
And they go and, and they'll work as a team and have objectives and like all of that stuff.
So when we do
we get some cocky kids that he's like, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, let's go. So we have the field training exercises that we run at Echelon Front. It's all of our hands-on scenario-based leadership training. And we've used Airsoft in the past, and we invested into these high-speed laser tag systems that allow us to minimize the safety risks. There's no projectiles being shot. And so it opens up to where the clients that want to come through the training, it's much greater than it would be if it was Airsoft or paint.
Right.
But, I mean, we use Airsoft and paintball facilities. And every facility that we've used, the field, the managers, for the most part, have been awesome to us.
Yeah.
And, they're happy. They're like, oh, cool. And it's really cool because they'll be like, hey, what are you guys doing? And we'll explain it to them. And they're like, do you mind if we kind of come watch? It's funny.
Yeah.
And we're always like, yeah, that's fine. And they sit back and, man, we used a facility up in Oklahoma City recently. And the manager, he's a former Army vet. And he sat literally back and, he was working, he's like keeping, emptying trashes. And he was probably one of the better people that we've worked with, to be honest, because he was on site the whole time, emptying trashes. Most people are like
just there if you need him.
Yeah.
Like, taking care of the facility. Or even like, hey, we'll have somebody
unlock the gate and then they're gone for the day, which is fine. We actually prefer that because then
in a lot of situations,
because most people are like, oh, you have to have somebody, a safety ref on the field. And we're like, we're not using Airsoft or paint, but we've actually kind of realized they're doing that because they say that's needed so that they can see what we're doing. Yeah. Which is fine. That's cool. Hey, the world needs more leaders.
But again, just be honest about it.
Just say, hey, but this guy was awesome. He's like, hey, do you guys mind if I watch? And we're like, no. Dude, he sat in on every debrief and took notes.
Really?
Yeah, it was really cool. I saw him like kind of sitting back there, and there's a few times he's like writing stuff down in his phone. I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I was saying that to say is like that community has been pretty cool to us.
Yeah.
And, we'll go to facilities on weekends to kind of check them out. Dude, there are people camping out over the weekend and setting up their grills.
To see. Like, it's so much fun.
People like set up their gear to do gear swaps and trade. So my thing is like, that's cool. And people are like, oh, well, they're trying to act like they're in the military. Maybe not.
Yeah, but also
maybe they're just having fun.
Pops off, right? The kids who've been playing airsoft are gonna be a lot more equipped than the dad who's got 3 safes full of guns and
that
only has ever shoot them at a range once a year.
You just triggered some people right now, and I love it.
It's the truth.
Because if you're, let's just say, if we're going to take a group of guys, and let's just say something did pop off, and Jocko's like, JP, I need you in the, you're going to run the Texas region, right? Like,
sure.
Boom, and let's just say like.
I volunteer as chaplain.
My man. Aiden could be your intern.
Come on, baby.
Let's just say, let's go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Hypothetical rabbit hole. Something does pop off.
Right.
And I'm looking at 2 groups. And you have a group of airsofters and a group of guys that go to the sports bars and just drink
but have really nice gear because they've got great jobs.
Hey, they have really nice gear because they have really good jobs, and they have safes full of gear, but they don't actually put their gear on. They don't use it. And then I have a group of airsofters that have access to weapons, and they're using their gear. You know what group I'm picking?
The airsoft kids.
100%.
Absolutely.
100% picking those kids because you know what? They're coachable, they're teachable, and they're going to listen.
Yep.
And they're hungry.
Yeah. And they've got a little bit, like, it's not real world, it's not real battle, but they also know, like, hey, you know what? That's not going to be good cover.
But what you're saying is, I'm sorry, I'm going to count, is wrong because what they're doing is right. I've watched guys playing airsoft use cover and move real time.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, they're going to understand how to do those things.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, whereas the guy coming off the street may be like, oh, I can hide in this bush, and the airsoft guy is going to be like, don't freaking hide in that. That's a terrible bush.
Yeah, you're hiding behind a bush that doesn't stop bullets. Yep. There's a difference between cover and concealment.
Right.
And, so... Anyways.
Yeah, like they're going to have some practical experience there, which I love these types of things. So here's what happened. I was going to say fast forward, it's kind of rewind a couple of weeks for me. We're at youth camp, and there's a kid who is junior high, 13, 14 years old.
Okay.
He gets off the bus, and he's in fatigues.
Okay.
Full fatigues.
Cool.
With boots.
Nice.
Got a cap on.
Okay.
And so I just kind of see him. I don't really say anything. And then, like, the rest of the week, and mind you, it's pretty hot for him to be in, like, a full set of fatigues, like jacket, pants, the whole deal. So the rest of the week, I don't really see anything. Well, we're getting ready for worship one night, and he's wearing all of this again. He's got an 82nd Airborne patch on one arm.
Sweet.
And he's got a Marine patch on the other arm.
Sweet.
So even to the untrained eye, I'm like, this is not good. Yeah. But I asked the question. I was like, hey, so do you have family that served? Right? Because maybe, like, that's what he's doing, right? Yeah. You get a young, like, 12, 13, maybe 14-year-old kid max who's wearing, stuff that he got from his dad or from his older brother or whatever. Because the boots, like, you can see the end of the steel toes coming out of both of the boots. Okay. Like,
they're older boots.
Yeah, they're well worn. And so, because there have been a few times where I've seen some kids who have dressed like that and asked that question and like, no, like, this is my dad's unit and, like, this is my older brother's unit over here.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So, like,
or, hey, I got it from, like, if you're the Dinnell boys, I got this from a garage sale and these patches were from my uncle that we put on this uniform.
Right.
Like
there's any number of reasons why somebody that age would be wearing that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I asked him, I was like, do you have family that serves? And he was like, no. I'm like, okay, so can you, why the uniform? Like, why you wearing the fatigues? He's like, oh, I thought they were cool. I got them from the Army Navy store. I was like, cool. I was like, what about the patches on your arms? And he's like, oh, they were in, like, a bin for the patches, so I just threw them on. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
I think it's really cool if you want to go into service and want to serve our country, man.
Yeah.
I think that's like a really noble thing.
Yeah.
It's like, but I would also just caution you, like, as you get older,
Yeah.
you've got some patches and things that are mismatched.
Yeah.
And if you're going to play the part, I was like, the guys who really served,
Yeah.
they're going to come up to you. They're going to ask questions.
Yeah.
And I was like, and you could find yourself in trouble if you're not careful. And he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, all right.
Yeah.
So like I didn't know how to handle the situation.
I think you handled it great. You said, hey, you asked questions.
Right.
You got information.
Sure.
And you gave him guidance. Hey, something to think about.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. Like, the kid's not claiming to be in the military.
He's not. And he was
when
he was quick to say, like, this is where I got it.
I don't
Like,
think there's
hey, that's
anything.
totally good.
Here's the deal. I don't think there's anything wrong with what he's doing or what he did, because he literally bought stuff and put it together. Now, should he have been a little more mindful of not mix matching different branches and units? Yeah, but at the end of the day, like, who cares?
But
like,
also, so like, if you're in that situation, now let's say that this kid's 23. All right.
Okay.
All right. So let's put 10 more years on him. Okay. And say that this is still something that he's doing. You come up and you're like, hey, what's this? And he's like, oh yeah, I got them at Army Navy store. And you're like, well, you're mix matching patches and all that. And he's like, yeah, they were in the sale bin or whatever. Like, what do you say at that point?
I'd be like, cool.
Yeah.
Like, I literally would not care, because he's not claiming.
Yeah.
He's not claiming.
The only thing I wonder about that is, like, so with that stuff, like, as long as, in my mind, right, as long as he's not, like, getting the discount, right?
Yeah.
As long as, like, people aren't automatically like, hey, thank you for your service, here's the because, so for me, like, we go to some places where they give discounts for first responders.
Yep.
And I'm a chaplain of a police department. And they'll be like, oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I am not a first responder.
Yeah.
I am not. Like,
No, that's good.
I'm a chaplain for a police department. If you want to do it, like, that's fine. But I'm not one of these dudes.
Yeah. No, I think,
And
bro,
there are a lot of people that do. They're like, no, if you're helping out, like, that's great. I'm like, that's cool. But
you want to be very clear.
yeah, like, I am. Are you a first responder? No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what is this? I'm a chaplain for a PD. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm with these guys. That's why I'm doing whatever. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll give it to you then. Yeah. And the officers that I'm with whenever we do those kind of things, like, they laugh and they're like, bro, you should just take the discount. I was like, no.
Yeah.
No,
I think
not,
the way you do it is right.
Because in my mind, that's stolen valor.
No, the way
of sort, right?
The way you're doing it is right. It's fact. It's the way you do it is right. And with this kid, the way you addressed it is good to go. And when he becomes a young adult, you know, are there people that wear fatigues hoping for that free handout? For sure. And guess what? There's a lot of veterans that still do that, hoping for that free handout. So
yeah,
it's unfortunate, but in their mind, they think they earned it. I have my own opinions about that.
Sure.
You know, the thing I will say that drives me crazy, and there's a few other instructors at Echelon Front, I won't name their names, that it drives them crazy too. We will text about it often. It's when the airlines, you know, let, you know, active duty military board first, which I think is awesome.
Stellar.
There are
especially if you're on Southwest, where you get to pick your seats and all that stuff first. Yeah.
But there are definitely people that board early that should not be in that line because they're not active duty.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm just, every time I'm like because I know.
I will tell you, that's why I stopped carrying my ILBE pack on planes. Like, it's way easier. It's way easier to pack. It's got so many compartments in it, and I can cram a bunch of stuff into that and smash the piss out of that thing and put it into the carry-on deal.
You should put,
but they don't ask.
You should make. Well, what do you mean they don't ask?
Like, they don't. If I've got that ILBE pack, whenever I traveled with it, they didn't ask if it would fit into the carry-on thing. They just, because I was young and fairly in shape, they just made the assumption that's so they wouldn't ask if it would fit into the carry-on thing. I just, like, got it past screenings and all of that stuff, like, basically no questions. And I didn't think about it for forever until I started getting asked, like, or being told, like, thank you for your service. I'm like, now, why do people keep doing that? And one of my buddies was like, "You're freaking carrying a military pack,
style pack,
Well, and it's because it came from the Army Navy store. It's a legit surplus pack. It's got all that stuff." And I was like, "This makes so much sense," because I just got used to carrying it. I didn't think about it anymore, I don't have any patches or anything on it, so I stopped taking that on planes with me because of that reason.
Yeah, we should make a patch that says "Not a veteran."
I'm totally. I'll get Kyle on it. The guy who made the mustard patch.
Seriously.
100%. Yeah.
Cool.
Not a veteran.
Yeah.
I thank you for your service. Yeah.
Not a veteran. Thank you for your
Yep.
service.
And then like a one underneath it that just says hashtag NCC, and we'll make it happen. Dude, thanks for answering that question.
Yeah,
This has been one of those things. That's
I am gonna.
weird to deal
Josh
with.
and I are gonna actually do NCC shirts.
Are we really?
Yeah, we're gonna do
I'm
that.
so stoked.
That you're not allowed to wear. So, anyways, with that,
That's cool. That's cool.
awesome. Hey, appreciate your guys' support as always. Thank you for listening, subscribing, liking, all the comments, the back and forth conversations that you guys have on YouTube really helps us out. It's a great way to support the podcast. And if you're listening to this, obviously you're subscribed. As you share it with others, encourage them to subscribe and be notified when we have episodes that come out. If you guys want to support us, check out Little Cattle Co. So that's littlecattle.co. Also check out On the Path Printing. Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu is a ministry that I'm a part of. Go to originusa.com, jockofuel.com. Check out the products. Support those that support our nation and our economy. I have the new... This is the Burr line, BRRR. It's their, it's their cooling technology that they have. They're trying it out. I have a long sleeve, and then I have 2 of the hoodies.
Bro, I'm going to have to get the long sleeve stuff because I got to watch out for those UV rays.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was outside doing a bunch of yard work, picked the hottest part of the day last week multiple times to test this out, and it's absolutely incredible. So if you want to check out their gear, again, that's originusa.com, jockofuel.com. Appreciate all the support that you guys have given Lucas and I with the podcast for, again, just listening and sharing with others. So hope you guys have an awesome day. And to remember, go out there, put in the work, and to never settle.